Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today and the Auditor General for her report. We've been seeing a lot of her lately, and I appreciate all the work she does. Over the last few years, we've seen a fairly dramatic increase in online child exploitation, and basically any child with a connection to the internet is at risk. In particular, we've had several boys commit suicide who have been exploited through video game chats. A year ago, I had an opportunity to visit the RCMP's National Child Exploitation Center, and got to see the work that Mr. Larkin does there. I'm just wondering, Mr. Larkin, is your department, what's your department seeing when it's coming, any trends around this, and how does this interface with some of the child exploitation that we see happening around First Nation communities, but also that's happening from Canada to other countries around the world? I recently had the ambassador from the Philippines complimenting Canada on our cooperation with Philippines, but also frustrated that we don't necessarily have the same presence in the Philippines like some other countries do. We have one RCMP officer stationed in the Philippines, where other countries will have a significant number of police officers because the exploitation happens across the border. It's often Canada is the #4 source country for perpetrators coming to the Philippines or exploiting from Canada to the Philippines. So just wondering if we can get a bit of a picture of what's going on with that from your perspective.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. In relation to online child sexual exploitation impacting First Nation communities and anywhere in Canada for that matter, we recognize that those that prey on the most vulnerable do not discriminate. And so our First Nation communities are susceptible, and actually a significant amount of work needs to be done in our First Nation communities across the country, not only from an investigative perspective, from a proactive prevention and education perspective, and there's significant work happening. The National Child Exploitation is celebrating its 20th anniversary, and so it's an opportune time to look at the way we deploy and the work that we're doing, and in partnership with Witness Protection, looking at enhancing and strengthening that program. However, specifically speaking to Philippines, as you're aware and you mentioned, we have deployed one officer, a child exploitation subject matter expert to that country. We just actually had a team from national headquarters from the program area travel to Philippines to meet with Philippine authorities, meet with police officials, government officials, as well as our member there to do a review and an evaluation of the program to see whether or not it requires enhancement. And so as we look at our deployment across, we currently touch 73 countries across the world from a liaison perspective, but obviously recognizing some of the different challenges. And so the program review is not complete in relation to the Philippines to see whether or not we will adjust and/or redeploy or strengthen our commitment there. But that is certainly on the radar as we continue to look at how do we strengthen this. Child exploitation remains a significant challenge and issue in our country that requires significant amount of work to be done.
In terms of human trafficking victims in this country, we know that the stakeholders have told me that around 4% of our population is Indigenous, yet of the victims that they're helping, and these are the ones that we know of, about 50% of the victims that we help are Indigenous. Is there a particular focus from the RCMP on how do we help these victims? How do we bring these cases to resolution? What's your perspective on that?
So thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chair. The National Child Exploitation Center does have a complete victim identification center. And so those officers are largely focused on identifying victims of the crime and working with tracking and finding and locating those individuals. Clearly, it's an area that needs to be strengthened. Quite frankly, when you look at the underreported crime of child exploitation as well as the volume, it becomes a significant challenge. And so there's much work to be done in that particular piece. But I'm going to ask Assistant Commissioner Warren Brown to talk about several initiatives that are specific to Indigenous communities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A recent example I could provide is our engagement with some of the national Indigenous organizations, including Inuit communities. Many of the Inuit communities have young adults and children come down to larger hubs, some hubs that we do not police, a different police of jurisdiction, where concern is a high disproportionate rate of human trafficking. Again, as Deputy Larkin had mentioned, it's underreported. The challenge is to identify and build trust, strengthen those relationships to ensure that a higher accuracy of reporting is brought to our attention. From a national lens, we're responsible for policing 13 divisions in Canada. So again, when we police 22% of the population, it's important that we engage and improve partnerships with some of the bigger police organizations. So that's an endeavor before us, but I appreciate your concern, and it's certainly something that we're trying to get a better stance on.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to